everyone.
Try again.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining CDBG third Thursday at 3 p.m. We have a very exciting discussion today. Ginny Erdley is back, and she is going to be presenting to us about how to access and use the Salesforce portal for our applications for the September 30th annual competition round. Before we get started, I want to introduce a new member of our staff. First, sitting over here to my right is Jason Teal. He's a CDBG specialist and project manager. He will be taking over projects at some point. Currently, he's just helping us get things organized and get prepared for the annual competition round. But he will be a project manager soon. So everyone, welcome Jason.
Thank you.
And with that, I will I'll start sharing my screen.
Go ahead.
For our PowerPoint presentation. Okay, please, people, let me know if you can't see the PowerPoint presentation here. Again, welcome to Third Thursday. This is our team, as always, with the new addition of Jason Teal here, and happy that Ginny Erdley is joining us virtually to present about Salesforce. Before we get started on the Salesforce presentation, I know everyone will be happy to hear this. New HUD census data was released at about 9:30 a.m. this morning. We haven't had too much time to process it, but one thing that we can notify people of is that as of August 1st, 2024, to qualify any new low and moderate income areas, grantees should use the new census data. So that will apply to our September 30th annual competition round. There's a link on the PowerPoint. If you Google HUD new census data, it will probably show up as well on your Google. We will probably send another email out about this tomorrow, just notifying everyone about the new census data. We are in the process of updating our website. As you all know, we have an LMI tool on our website. We got the information over to our IT department, and hopefully they will have that fixed soon. But just repeating, and everyone's been asking about this, when is the new census data out? The new census data is out, so please go to HUD Exchange. We'll send an email about it tomorrow, and just be advised that that September 30th annual competition due date, we will be requiring the updated census data for those applications. We're going to move on, but if anyone has any questions about that, please reach out to one of the staff members, okay? All right, so today we're going to talk about the Salesforce application portal and how to fill out an application. Ginny will walk through the important steps to filling out the application in our new portal. But before we get started, I just want to draw attention to everyone to a new area on our website. Before you can apply for an application, you need to ensure that your Salesforce account is set up properly. We have 5 documents here, listed here, that we have uploaded to our website. I'm going to pull up our website here and show you. In the CDBG resource library, we added a new layer here called application support. Here we have LMI sample surveys in English and Spanish, and LMI survey tabulation documents in English and Spanish. And we also have our Salesforce how-to guides. These are essentially Word documents that could walk you through the process of setting up an account for yourself or on behalf of a community. See, they're nice little Word documents with pictures that walk you through all of those steps to setting up your account. If you have any issues setting up your account at that point, then you can reach out to Ginny or myself or our Salesforce staff to help you getting these accounts set up properly, because you have to have the account set up properly to put in the application. All right, so with that, we have those new resources on the website. I will pass it over to Ginny now, and she will present on walking through the Salesforce application.
Okay,
All
thank
right.
you. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, good. Well, thank you for letting me hop on here and talk to you guys about the website portal. For those that have already done applications last year, you are pretty well acquainted with our portal already. It is very similar to how it was last year. So some of this will feel a little redundant, but you always can use a refresher. So in order to actually access the portal after you've set up your accounts, you're going to go to the login page that there's a hyperlink there. There's also a way to get to it when you go to each of our categories for applications. At the bottom, there's a section that says apply, and it will take you directly to where you would log into your accounts or set up to register for an account. You can go to the next slide. So as Andrew said, we have step-by-step guides on the website now that tell you exactly how to create an account. But one thing to keep in mind when you're doing this is that you're going to actually be creating a business account. Don't follow the instructions that you may come across from previous emails or instructions that were sent out that say anything about setting up an individual account. Because for CDBG purposes, since our applications go to cities and counties, that entity is treated as a business in the wonderful Salesforce world. So just remember that. Always set it up as a business account, and the instructions we have should tell you that. Now, if you have any issues setting up the actual account, I will have some information. Andrew might have some information. However, contact the Commerce IT Salesforce team, because they are the ones that can actually go in there and see exactly what you've done, your status, and so forth. And then they may be able to troubleshoot to say, hey, well, the reason this isn't working is because of this. And that's what their job on our team is to help support with that. You can go to the next slide. So after you have made your account and you actually log into the Salesforce website, you're going to see something that looks very similar to this. It's going to have a little message at the top that says application gateway, and the very top of it's just going to give you information about some of the funding programs that are available and open at the very top of the page. You don't have to click on anything at the top of the page. What we're going to do on the next slide is I'm going to show you that once you get logged in there, you're going to actually scroll to the bottom of the portal. And at the bottom of that portal, you will see these little tiles, and one of them says CDBG application. That is what you will click on to actually start applications. The other things that are at the top are more for information. So if you were to click one of those on the last slide, when you get into the portal, it's really just going to take you to landing pages on the Commerce site to tell you about those programs. So you might find something else besides CDBG that you might want to learn about. So you can go ahead and click on that. But if your goal is to submit an application, do not click at the top of the other page. So what you'll do is you'll click here on CDBG application, and then it will open up a new screen for you. And on that screen, you will have two options. You will either continue an application you had started previously, which if it's the first time you're logging in, you won't really be doing that, or you will be starting a new application. Now, let's say that you had started a new application this week and you saved it and you need to go back to finish it. That's the point where you would actually click on continue a CDBG application. So for new ones, just click on the new application and then a new page will open up for you. The new page will have all of our funding opportunities that we currently have available in this database for application. So you do see, housing, childcare, all the annual competition programs are listed there, plus our regional water. If you are trying to apply for a commercial rehabilitation, an economic development, or an urgent need, those are not part of this application portal. They are part of a different portal, and we will get you the information for those. But today we're only talking about the annual competition portal, which will house all these. So at this point, you know that you have logged in, you're going to start a new application, and you want to do a sidewalk and trails project. So you would click on sidewalk and trails, and it would pop open a new section for you. At this point, this is where you're going to actually select the city or county that you are applying on behalf of. So whether you are a grant administrator or you're not, this is where you would click on that little drop-down box and it will pop up all of the cities and counties in Kansas, and you would select the one that you are applying on behalf of. On the next slide, you'll see that there is an option that, let's say that you're applying for a city. I just selected Auburn on here so you can kind of see the drop-down menu. All the cities and counties should be in this database. So you should not have to create a new entity or anything like that, because we only take applications from cities and counties. On the next slide, it does show you that there is a yes, you found your organization, or no, you did not find your organization. But it doesn't really matter about that because, like I said, you guys are not going to have to create new things at all. It should all be in the system for you already. So you can go ahead and go to the next slide. And this is just explaining further if you did have to create an entity. I would say if you feel like you cannot find an entity, reach out to me or to the Salesforce team, because it should be in there. So go ahead to the next slide. So now that you're in here and you're getting ready to do a sidewalk and trail project application, this is what your screen is going to look like. So you selected what city or county you're applying on behalf of. And what you're going to do now is you're going to actually click on application information, and it will open a new screen for you. This is important to know exactly what you guys are going to be entering, because this section is where we are gathering the applicant's information. Last year, we had a little confusion just because of how labels were on the portal. Some people didn't realize that they were entering the applicant's information and not the grant administrator's information. But remember, you've already created a Salesforce account and you already are linked to this entity because you're applying on behalf of them. So that's why it says application preparer, and that would be your grant administrator's name. Now, I know sometimes cities and counties apply for themselves, so it would say whoever the contact is at the city and county preparing the application right there. That's fine, but just make sure if you're a grant administrator, you're putting the actual applicant's information. Something that you do need to make sure that you have is an active UEI number that's registered on SAM.gov, because you are a governmental entity that's applying for funding from us. So make sure that the city or county has an active UEI number. The application is on, if the application itself is on behalf of, let's say, a nonprofit that's a non-governmental entity, and you want to say that you're applying on behalf of the Sunflower Trails or something along those lines that are not governmentally based, you actually type their name in the sub-applicants box. If you are applying for a governmental entity, such as, let's say that the county, Shawnee County is applying on behalf of the city of Auburn for something, then they will actually click the subrecipient, because remember, all of the cities and counties are in our database. So then they can use that drop down menu to pick who their applicant, their subrecipient is. Then under the application contact information, you just put the applicant's contact title. Most of the time, this is going to be the city clerk or the county clerk. It might be the economic development person at the city or county. Put their phone number, their names, and that's who we actually would contact as a first contact with the city or county, apart from the grant administrator for the project. This just shows you a continuation of what that page looks like, because we ask for the address. This is not the address of where the project is. This is the address of the applicant's offices. So the city hall or the county district courts or wherever the applicant actually resides for conducting business for the grant. The citizen participation section is next after the applicant information. And this is where you're going to put the date of your public hearing. So for those of you that aren't familiar, which I think everyone on the call is, but CDBG requires 2 public hearings to be held. One of them is prior to application, which is where you are going to put this information. It's to notify the citizens of what's going on in the community. So if they have any questions or concerns, they can come to that meeting and voice their opinion or their concerns. So this is where you would put that. That publication is to be no fewer than 7 days and no more than 20 days before the date of publication and the date of public hearing. So they are calendars. They will make you actually select the dates. You can't type them in, I don't think. I tried to type them in the other day and it didn't let me. So just use the calendar option on the right. And also make sure that you put the name of the newspaper that it's published in, so that we have that on documentation as well. So project information, this is just a brief description and notification to us of what the project is. Now, since you already clicked on the sidewalk and trails category, the only option in the project type dropdown is going to be sidewalks and trails. You aren't going to have multiple things that you have to cycle through or anything like that. Just select sidewalks and trails from the dropdown menu and then give a brief description of what the project is. We don't need to know linear feet. We don't need to know anything like that. We want to know this is a sidewalk project that runs through State Street to 12th Avenue or something like that. Something brief that says what the project is. One or 2 sentences. The other section that's very important here is going to be your project beneficiaries. So we want to know the total number of people that are being served and how many of them are low moderate income. Sometimes, depending on the project, we don't necessarily determine your LMI status based on what you put in this box, but we do have to know the total amount of people being given the opportunity to benefit from the project, because we have to report that to HUD. The next section is where you're actually going to tell us how you are determining your low moderate income. So the method of determining LMI, it can be a combination of several different methods. Sometimes it is census tract only. Sometimes it is census data only. Sometimes it is a survey that was conducted. And then sometimes it will be both, or it could be all. And then some of our projects like youth job training, ADA, and childcare, those are qualified through something we call limited clientele. And that option will be, since we're in the example that's doing sidewalks and trails, it doesn't show you a limited clientele as an example, but if you apply for those other three, you would have that option to select. Now make sure if you do a survey that you put the date that your survey was conducted or final. And if you had a survey that was approved already, you would put the date that that survey was approved. Now, since we have new census data, we're not going to have any surveys that were approved. So it's really just going to be when your survey was conducted at this point. This is pretty self-explanatory, but make sure you have your state representative, your state senator, and your U.S. representative information because we do have to report those to HUD. And the last thing that's on this screen, if I'm remembering correctly, is where you're talking about performance capacity. So every CDBG project has to have some sort of a grant administrator assigned to manage the project locally, or if they hire someone that's a staff that's to be new to staff, if they're hiring a grant administrator or a consultant, things like that. This is actually where you're going to put that information. So depending upon who's doing what for your project, will determine which of those three options you're going to select in the performance capacity. So at this point, you have filled out some of the application information that is required. Once you do this, you need to push next. Don't close anything. That very first page where you've put applicant information, all of your LMI status, the project description, those things. At that point, none of that data is saved yet until you get to the bottom of that screen and click next. If you do not click next and you close it, it will lose everything that you entered. If you click next, then it will save it. So now that you've completed that information, a new screen will pop up for the next section of the application. And this is the community needs form. And the community needs form is required for every single application. We use this information because we want to know the story of your community as a whole. So this is going to be a brief and precise narrative. When I say brief and precise, I really mean like one paragraph that describes the needs of the community. This isn't the part of our application where you are going to talk about the need for the project. This is the needs of the community as a whole. So if you know, because you are working with the community, that they have a need for infrastructure such as water and sewer, they need a new water tower, they need to have sidewalks, they need a park, all of these things that are potential projects for CDBG, or even things that aren't. Maybe they need streets, which we don't fund this year. Those are things that you would discuss in the community needs section. So this is also something that you would draft ahead of time and some sort of a document, whether you use Google Docs, Microsoft Word, something like that. You're going to want to address the things that are listed here in the instructions. Address housing, talk about the community's needs, draft it, and then copy and paste your answer into the box that we provide here. and then you will select next. When you select next, it will save the data you entered in that box, and it will take you to the next part of the application. So the next part are the civil rights information. This is where you're going to collect known demographics, and you put that data into this part of the application. Once you put those data points in there, you just select next. It will save it and move you to the next section. So earlier we did talk about program capacity, where you told us your goal of how you're going to have your project administered. Now, this part of the application is telling us exactly who you chose and who they are. So this section allows you to tell us, or no, I'm sorry, I misread what I was just reading. I'm ahead of myself a slide. This is talking about past projects, isn't it? Yes, it is. Okay, so this section's where you're going to talk about past projects that have already happened that are CDBG projects. So in the past 5 years, if you have had any type of CDBG project, we want to know about it. So if you had a CVR, we want to know about that. If you had a sidewalk project last year, a daycare, you would enter the information here. So in the section where it says, has your community had any previous CDBG projects in the last 5 years? You would click yes if you have some, and then the total number of projects that you have. If you don't have any, then you just select no, and you don't have to put a number, and then you go to next, it'll take you to the next section. But for an example, if you click yes and you put 1, it will go ahead and take you to the next screen. And it will give you the opportunity to tell us what that project was. So you would put the date that the project began. That's really going to be the date of, I shouldn't say date that it began, but the funding year. So, you know, we're about to fund 2024 projects. We had 23 projects. You would just put that it was a 2020 project, what type of project it was. I put a street here. Is it complete 100%? And then the date that the project actually closed with us. And once you enter that information, you click next and it will save your information. Now, one thing that it doesn't do, it doesn't show you once you save it to the table. It will show you if you save and close and go back in, you can see that data. But once you save it, it does save it. You just don't actually get to see it populated in the table until you've closed it all the way and come back in. I don't know why it does that, but that's how they have it set up. So this next section is for proposed funding, and you can see that this also has a thing at the top that talks about an empty table. This is the same concept. After you actually enter this data and you save it and you are done with the application information section and you go back in there, you'll be able to see all the data points that you entered on a table of contents so that you can actually look at them and see, oh yeah, I did go ahead and put my funding from KDHE on there. It did save it and so forth. So it is a little bit of a backward step because you have to finish it and then go back to view it. But that's how the coding works for how they programmed the system. But this section is where you're going to talk about all of the proposed funding for your project. So your matching funds that are required for almost all the CDBG programs, that's what you're actually going to enter on here. The first section there says, would you like to add other sources of funding? This is always going to be yes. Because you have to have matching funds for these annual competition applications. So you would select yes, And then it will ask you how the grant funds that are being requested for this application. So how much CDBG money are you actually asking us for this project? You put that amount right there. And then it'll say other funding source amount. You are going to say how much your other funding source is. Now, I believe on the next screen, it will show you if you select yes. Yes. Okay. So when you select yes, it will pop up and let you enter a new screen where you actually put the name of the source of funding. So let's say that you're getting funding from USDA for the sidewalk and trail that you are doing. You would actually put USDA Rural Development, the contact person, which is probably the project manager that you're working with there, their telephone number, and then the amounts that you're actually requesting from them. So at the end of your application, it will show us all your funding sources, and all of those should add up to what your total project cost is. So just be very aware that whatever you put in here is going to be what shows up. Now, as I said before, you can go back after you save it and you can edit this. So if you see that you entered $500,000, but you meant to put 50,000, you can go back in there and edit that before you submit the full application. So don't worry about those types of things. All right, this is where I was getting ahead of myself a minute ago, and I was trying to tell you about where you would tell me who your grant administrator was. But this is actually where you're going to tell us that information. So there are generally two things that you are going to pre-select prior to your application. That is going to be grant administration and engineering or architectural services. Sometimes you may have legal services. So there is an option in this section. If that were the case, you could put that on there. You might have to have some sort of other consult from someone, a surveyor, something like that. Any of that stuff that's done pre-selection, pre-application, you will enter into this section. So what you do here, because we know you're going to at least have one or two, you will always say yes in this section. So always select yes, and then the number of contractors. So if you are saying that you have a grant administrator only, you don't need an engineer because you have a really small park project, you would just put one. If you have a street or a sidewalk project like what we're doing, and you need engineering and you have a grant administrator, then in that number of pre-selected contractors, you would put two. So you're either going to put one or two, and sometimes three. But when you click next, it'll take you to a new section, and that's where you will actually enter the information about these pre-selected services. So the first one that you need to be aware of is you need to put the firm's full name on there. We don't necessarily need to know right here the name of the person that you're working with at the firm, because we're going to see that on their engineering report or architectural report or so forth, so on and so forth. But we need to know the name of the firm, because I have seen last year where they actually just put someone's name, but they worked for, as an example, they worked for Bartlett and West. Well, I may know that so-and-so works at Bartlett and West because I've done sewer projects, but I don't need to know his name specifically. So make sure you put the name of the firm. And then they also have to have a UEI number. So make sure that you have their current and updated UEI number. Almost all of these guys are going to have that. The same with grant administration. So If you are a grant administrator and you have your own firm, or even if you're just an individual helping to do grant administration, and you don't work for, let's say, the county or the city that you're helping, you have to have your own UEI number because you are your own entity that is working on behalf of that community. If you are, let's say that you work for the city of Auburn and you are going to do their grant administration and you're not pre-selected, you're not going to even be in this section because you've already told us at the beginning that they're using staff themselves to actually be hired. So we just want to make sure that people know that if you're any type of grant administrator outside of the entity that is applying, you have to have a UEI number. So I hope that makes sense. If it doesn't, you can ask me about it later. But the drop-down menu for type of service will tell you the different types of services. I believe that there's 6 of them there, but it's really engineering, architectural services, legal services, administration, and maybe it's 5, and then there's an other. So that you will just select which one you're entering, the proposed cost of what it will be, who is paying for it. And this section you will type out. So if you're paying for engineering on the local side and you're using KDHE funds, because that's all local money, that's what you would put in there. But let's say that you're paying for grant administration and for whatever reason, you're paying some of it with our money and some of it with the city's money. You could put CDBG and KDHE or CDBG and the city of Auburn. Just be specific so we know where the source of funding is coming from. The date that they were selected, the date that they signed their contracts, sometimes those are the same dates, which is fine. Just use the calendar feature. And of course, you would select that they're pre-selected. There is a drop-down menu to tell us if you notified us about it. And that's really going to be if there were single bids that came in because you were trying to get grant administration, but you only got one response back. If that's the case, of course, you're going to contact us to ask us about that, and we'll say yes or no, if that's okay, or if you have to republish, things like that. But that's what that section is for. So now we are at the end of the application information section. And this is where you are going to get ready to actually save the application and be done filling out for this point, filling out any information about application information. So upon completing all the application information, you will select the box on the left confirming that you agree to all the regulations and restrictions that govern the CDBG program, and you'll click next to save it. When you click next, this is not submitting it. Just want to be very clear that right now you're not submitting it. And I might say that on the next slide. Yeah, I guess I don't say it exactly like that, but what this is doing is it's saving all this data that you see on the right. That's the stuff that you entered into the database, and that is what is being saved to the system. You have to click finish. Don't click close, because if you click close, it doesn't save everything. But if you click finish, it should save everything in its entirety that you have entered in this application information section. Now, we don't have the option, though we've been trying to have a way to print these. So this is why there is a little note at the top of the page that you will see that says, please copy and paste. Or sorry, please copy below into a document for your records. You can take screenshots or you can copy and paste it into a Word document to save it. But unfortunately, we don't have the capability right now for these to be easily printed or saved from the actual portal. That is hopefully going to be happening next year. It will happen next year, but this year they weren't able to do that for us. So, go ahead, Andrew. Okay, so at this point, you clicked finish, and this little lovely box that used to be red next to the application information now will say application complete, and it will turn green. What does that mean? What that means is that you filled out that portion of the application and that it is saved and it is there. It does not mean that you've submitted it for final review. So at this point, nothing's been submitted for final review. If you wanted to go back into the blue section that says application information, you can do that and you can edit things. You can do whatever you want to do from there. So don't be afraid that you clicked finish for that section. The next section that you are going to start working on, as you can see, there's two sections that still show red and it's incomplete. And the next section is going to be the narrative. So on the next screen, if I were to click the narrative, it's going to end up popping up a new screen. But here are some things to keep in mind before I actually show you that. The narrative questions are already available on the website, and they are in the application guidelines for each program that we have. So you do not have to make an account, log in, see what the application questions are, and or the narrative questions are from the portal. Everything you need to know for this part is already at your disposal on the website. So you don't have to worry about logging in just to get those. The answers to the questions, you need to draft those because they are the meat of your application. This is the part of the application that we try to train you guys on at application workshops of exactly what we want to hear about the projects themselves. So make sure you draft them ahead of time, have the city and the county review your drafts before you copy and paste them in, and keep copies of them because you're going to want to be able to have that into their application folders anyways. The narrative section doesn't have any type of save print option either. So again, that's why it's important to draft everything ahead of time. If you end up having some sort of an error, let's say that you accidentally copied and pasted answer number 2 into 2 of the sections and you realize that and you've already submitted it, it is not a big deal to contact me or to contact IT and we can get it fixed for you. Just make sure, as I said here, make sure you're copying into the correct boxes because unfortunately it's easy with several questions that are similar and the boxes are kind of small sometimes, especially if you're using like a laptop. You can accidentally paste something in the wrong slot. As a reminder, I know this isn't an application workshop, but keep the answers to your questions as detailed and short as you can. We want to get the story and we want to know what's going on, but we don't want it to read so much that the reader doesn't know what the project is. If you give too many details about it, then we're not going to understand exactly what you're asking. And that can get very frustrating for raters and also for the communities and the grant administrators. So on the next slide, this is a picture of what the actual narrative forms look like on the portal. And so you're going to be okay with just copy and pasting your answers in here. The questions, like I said, are already on there. You want to go to the next slide because I think there's like 5 or 6 questions for each section. But the key here is that you copy and paste and you save and submit the form. Don't cancel, it's not going to save. If you can also click save form, but just save and submit form is going to get you, when you've entered everything, to the next screen where it shows you that your narrative is complete. Yay, it's complete. So once you do that and your narrative is complete, you are ready to go to the last section of the application. And this section is the support documents. So if you want to go to the next slide, Andrew, this is where you're actually uploading all of the support documents. And we make a checklist that's on the website already. So again, you don't have to already have an account to look at this, but we look at the applications checklist before you gather all of your documents. What you do is you will click, let's say you're doing a statement of assurances for the city of Auburn. You're going to call that the City of Auburn Statement of Assurances. You will click the little checkbox, and then you will find the document on your computer and upload it to this database. You want to go to the next slide? It gives you an option at the bottom to upload the file, and after you upload it, it will show it at the bottom, and you click next. If you want to do multiple at the same time, you can totally do that. And it will show every one of those for you there as a preview before you click next. One thing to keep in mind, make sure you name your documents correctly so we know who it's for and what type of document it is. That way we can keep everything organized. And then at that point, after you click next, it will say that your documents are complete. And that means that when all of those check boxes are checked, all the things are uploaded, all of those things on the side are green, that means that you've done everything that's required for the application. You can still go back at this point and edit anything you need to, or change anything, upload anything. So the next step is where you're actually going to submit the application to us for review. So it will tell you once you click submit, you have successfully submitted an application. Yay! Now we get to do more work. So you will, the applicant and county, they need to just verify that everything's in the application before you submit it. So this may be a time where the grant administrator has to go out there and talk to them and show them some things, have a meeting, have a Zoom meeting, or something like that, just to say, hey, this is what I've worked on. This is what's in the portal. Are you ready for me to go ahead and submit this for you? And when you click submit, that is when you actually finalize everything. So once you do that, you cannot go log back in and edit things yourself. A final confirmation message will appear, and it will look like this bottom section right here where it says, thank you for your CDBG application. Your application's under review. If you have questions, don't email me. I don't want to know. No, I'm just kidding. Let's say that you realize that you did something wrong. On the next slide, I think I talk about this. But if you think you did something wrong, it is okay. Until we have finally accepted after the actual application deadline date, if you have done something that needs fixed, just contact us and we'll help you try to fix it. If it's after the application deadline date, you'll probably get deducted points if it's not something that we can actually let you fix. Most things are fixable, so don't worry about that. We will try to work with you to figure that out. If there is something that we find during review that needs to be fixed, and that thing does not require that your project's thresholded, like it doesn't disqualify you, then we will contact you and we'll give you a time frame that you have to get corrections to us. That's no big deal either. But one thing to keep in mind, because we have had questions about this, is that if your application does not pass the threshold, we're not telling you right away because that's part of the final award process. So you don't get notified of threshold until after we've made award announcements. Because if your project is threshold, then you are disqualified from the application and we're not going to review any more of the application. I think that's it. Is there one more slide? I can't remember. No. So I know it was a little tedious and a little daunting, but for those of you that have used the portal before, it looks very, very similar. Really, the only things that have changed is a little bit of content because we asked a couple questions differently for the narrative. We try to streamline everything so all of our programs have the same questions. And I think we did a good job. We'll still keep working and we want feedback. In the meantime, if you are working on applications, there's a couple things that they are updating in the web portal to be aware of. We had some funding numbers that have changed where our total amount you can request is $800,000, but the cap for entering numbers in this portal was set for $750,000. It's going to take about a week or so for them to go in there to fix that. So please be patient and wait for them. Applications are not due until September. So you don't have to get in there and actually start an application right now. It would be a good idea to go in there and get your account set up now and maybe do a test application so that you can make sure you understand how it works. But our applications are not first come, first served, so there's no rush in trying to submit anything now. I'm not going to look at anything until probably, what day is that? October 1st. So don't send anything in just yet. It's not a race. But does anybody have any questions?
And everyone out there, I know this was a long third Thursday, but we did record this. We will have this recording up on the website so that grant administrators and application preparers can refer to it as they are working on the application. We will also pin this presentation into our resource page on that application support tab that I showed at the very beginning of the PowerPoint. So if does anyone have any questions while we're all here about the Salesforce portal? It's okay. I know you will at some point.
You will all have questions after you get in there. Actually, you will not have questions when you get in there because I have trained you efficiently.
Okay, well, if we don't have any questions, again, as you're going through the Salesforce portal process, if you have any issues, email Ginny or myself or our Salesforce IT email that we showed at the beginning of this PowerPoint. We will get this video uploaded online very soon, and we will be sending a few administrative emails out to admins soon. One's about Section 3 closeouts. I think we have another one in the queue, but admins expect a couple emails from us soon. And then we'll be awaiting all of your questions about the new census data as well. Mm-hmm. All right. All right. With that, thanks everyone for joining us. We will see you next time.